Okay, we're up to the fourth aliyah. This is Numbers chapter 32, verse 20. Moses said to them, if you do this thing, if you arm yourselves for battle before the Lord, and your armed forces crosses the Jordan before the Lord until he has driven out his enemies before him, and the land will be conquered before the Lord. Afterwards you may return, and you shall be freed of your obligation from the Lord and from Israel, and this land will become your inheritance before the Lord. So Moses agrees. Now, interestingly enough, he didn't ask God what to do. Normally, when Moses is confronted with a new thing, he falls on his face and he says, "Wait a minute, let me go think about it. Let me go talk to God." And this is one of the extremely rare circumstances, maybe the only time in the five books, where Moses doesn't take time out to figure out what to do and doesn't ask God directly. He makes this decision on his own, which is very interesting. The land shall, okay, and verse 23. But if you do not do so, behold, you have sinned against the Lord, and beware of your sin, which will find you. So build yourself cities for your children, and enclosures for your sheep, and what has proceeded from your youth you shall do. The descendants of Gad and the descendants of Reuben spoke to Moses, saying, your servant will do as my master commands. Our children, our wives, our livestock, and our cattle will remain there in the cities of Gilad. But your servants will cross over, all who are armed for combat before the Lord, for the battle, as my master has spoken. Moses commanded Eleazar the Kohen, Yeshua the Nun, and all the paternal heads of the tribes of children of Israel concerning them. Moses said to them, if the descendants of Gad and Reuben cross the Jordan with you armed for battle before the Lord, and the land is conquered before you, you shall give them the land of Gilad as a heritage. So Moses says, listen, he knows he's not going to be there to witness all this. So he's making Yeshua ben Nun and Eleazar the Kohen, he's putting this on them. He's like, you guys got to make sure that this really happens. But if they do not cross over with you armed for battle, they shall receive a possession among you in the land of Canaan. What? They're gonna no matter what they get. I don't understand that. Okay, whatever. I'm just gonna let that one go because I don't understand that. The descendants of Gad and the descendants of Reuben answered, we shall do as the Lord has spoken to your servants. We shall cross over in an armed force before the Lord of the land of Canaan, and there we shall have the possessions of our inheritance on this side of the Jordan. Moses gave the descendants of Gad and the descendants of Reuben and half the tribe of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, the kingdom of Sihon, the king of Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, the land together with its cities within its borders, the kingdoms, cities of the surrounding territory. Now, why before was half Manasseh not mentioned? Is because they're a half tribe. So even though they were in on it the whole time, they're only mentioned here. The descendants of Gad built Dibon, Atarot, and Arior, Ataret, Shofan, Jezer, and Jogbeha, and Bet Nimrah and Bet Haran, fortified cities and sheepfolds, places for their sheep. The descendants of Reuven built Heshbon, Eliel, and Kirja Laham. Now, I think that these words are not really these are not real like Hebrew words. These are like Arabic, or I don't know what words these are. These are Aramaic. So you can see that sometimes so this is where the people who say that the Torah was edited and say, see that Moses didn't write it and it was written later, they say, see, like, because it's using words that are not Hebrew words. And some of these lines are proof for that argument that Moses did not write the whole Torah. And Nebo and Baal-Maon, their names having been changed. See, it admits that the names were changed. And Sibma, and they were called with the names of the city that they built. The children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, went to Gilad and conquered it, driving out the Amorites who were there. Moses gave Gilad to Machir, the son of Manasseh, and half of Manasseh, not the whole tribe, and settled in it. Yair, the son of Manasseh, went and conquered their hamlets and called them the hamlets of Yair. Noba went and conquered Kenath and surrounded village and called it Noba after his name. So these are all places that that parts of our tribes conquered, which is now basically Lebanon and parts of Syria, I think. Northern Jordan and Syria. These are the journeys of the children of Israel who left the land of Egypt in allegiance under the charge of Moses and Aaron. And now we're going to go into all the travels, okay? Moses recorded their starting points for their journeys according to the word of the Lord, and these were the journeys with their starting points. So Moses, now we already know where we were. We already read the verses of all the places where we went and all the places we went to, because this is in previous verses. But we're going to record it again, just the starting points. They journeyed from Ramses in the first month on the 15th month of the 15th day of the first month on the day following the Passover sacrifice. The children of Israel left triumphantly before the eyes of all the Egyptians. Remember that? Don't you guys remember that? That was 38 years ago. And the Egyptians were busy burying because the Lord had struck down their firstborn and wrought vengeance against their deities. Do you guys remember that? We destroyed their. God took down their firstborn and all the Egyptian gods. The children of Israel journeyed from Ramses and camped in Sukkot. They journeyed from Sukkot and camped in Ithram at the edge of the desert. They journeyed at Etham and camped in Pi Harihoth, which faces Baal Zephon, and they camped in front of Migdol. Now, Baal Zephon, I believe, is the name of another deity, another god. So why would this be written in the Torah? Why would God admit that there was other gods? Why would it be written in the Torah? There's a lot to say over there because there was an incident that actually happened over there. So that's why it's recorded here, because anything that happened along the way, Moses is going to remind them a little bit of how it happened, but he's going to do it in a kind of a little bit of a hint. Okay, they journeyed from Panay Harahealth and they crossed in the midst of the sea to the desert. They walked for 3 days in the desert of Ithram and encamped in Marar. That's where Marar is when the waters turn from bitter to sweet with that special plant that Moses put into the water because the people were complaining they didn't have water. You just have to read the Torah. See, and then they journeyed from Marar and they arrived in Elam. And in Elam there were the 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped there. Do you guys remember that? That was back. Remember, we're just repeating some places that were already mentioned. They journeyed from Elim and they camped by the Red Sea. They journeyed from Yamsuf. They journeyed from the Reed Sea and they camped in the desert of Sin. They journeyed from the desert of Sin and camped in Dofka. They journeyed from Dofka and camped in Alush. They journeyed from Alush and camped in Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. They journeyed from Rephidim and they camped in the Sinai desert. They journeyed from the Sinai desert and camped in Kivrot Hatava. So why did they here? They camped in the Sinai desert. That's where they got the 10 Commandments. That's where they got the Torah. But the Torah should tell you that. That'd be something super important that the Torah should put in between verses 15 and 16. But the Torah does not do that. And it just keeps on going. The journey from Kirot Hatava and camped in Hazeroth. So 38 years between Sinai and Kirot Hatava was the 38 years where we were wandering around. I believe, I'm pretty sure. They journeyed from Hazeroth and camped in Rithma. They journeyed from Rithma and camped in Rimon Perez. They journeyed from Rimon Perez and camped in Libnah. They journeyed from Libnah and camped in Rishashah. They journeyed from Rishashah and camped in Kahila Lelta. Whew, these are hard words, and I'm not even saying them correctly, not even English. Okay, they journeyed from Kehilatecha and camped in Mount Shepher. They journeyed from Mount Shepher and camped in Haradeh. They journeyed from Haradeh and camped in Makeloth. They journeyed from Makeloth and camped in Tahath. They journeyed from Tahath and camped in Tahareth. Taharech. They journeyed from Taharech and camped in Mithtakeh. They journeyed from Mithtakeh and camped in Hashmonah. They journeyed from Hashmonah and camped in Mozerath. They journeyed from Mozerath and camped in Bnei Jakan. These are really tired. These are really hard. They journeyed from Bnei Jakan and they camped in Har Hagidagag. Hagidageh. No, Gid. Woo, these are tough. They journeyed from Hor, from the mountain, from this one from the mountain. They journeyed from Hor Hagidagid and they camped in Jobathaha. They journeyed from Jobathaha and camped in Abrona. They journeyed from Abrona and camped in Etzion Geber. They journeyed from Etzion Geber and camped in the desert of Zin, which is Kadesh. They journeyed from Kadesh and camped in Mount Hor, at the edge of the land of Edom. Aaron the Cohen ascended Mount Hor at the Lord's bidding, and he died there on the first day of the 5th month in the 40th year of the children of Israel's exodus from Israel. Aaron was 133 years old, 123 years old when he died at Mount Hor. So he got to live a little bit over. So generally speaking, people live to Ad Masrim, but Aaron got 3 years more than that. The Canaanite king of Arad, who dwelt in the south in the land of Canaan, heard that the children of Israel had arrived. They journeyed from Mount. Now remember, there was a whole war. He came out and he fought them. They journeyed from Mount Hor and camped in Zalmanah. They journeyed from Zalmanah and camped in Punon. They journeyed from Punon and camped in Obath. They journeyed from Obath and camped at the ruins of Aviram and the Moabite boundary. They journeyed from the ruins and camped in Dibon Gad. They journeyed from Dibon Gad and camped in Almon Dibalahalemah. These are really hard words, and they're not really even Arabic. They're not Hebrew, apparently. They journeyed from Almon Diblahamea and camped in the mountains of Abarim in front of Nebo. So this is like in Jordan. They journeyed from the mountains of Abarim and camped in the plains of Moab and the Jordan at Jericho. They camped along the Jordan from Jeshmoth to Abel Shittim in the plains of Moab. So their camps were really spread out. We're talking about 3 million people, right? 600,000 men and all their wives and all the people over 60 and people under 20. So we're talking about 3 million people. So that ends verse 4th aliyah. Now let me tell you something. If this whole Torah, if the Torah had been written by J.E.P.D., let me go over this again. There's this whole theory out there called J.E.P.D. that there's documentary hypothesis, which everybody studies in university, and they all claim that the Torah is written later, right? They all say that Moses didn't exist, King David didn't exist. They all have their theory, and it's very interesting and very enthusiastic people, and I'm sure they're very intelligent, but I just have the same question I want to ask them, which is, why didn't they edit this out? Why couldn't they edit this much better? Why would the editors leave in all these names that weren't Hebrew names? One of the editors who wanted to show that the story was consistent and that King David and the whole story that they wanted to purvey, why wouldn't they make the names Hebrew names? Why would they keep the place names? If their editors were really in it for this whole story to keep that they made up the whole Hebrew nation story that promoted the King David narrative, why wouldn't they do a better job of editing? That's my question, which I keep on asking, and I cannot wait to get some answer someday.